Give a man a fish, and he will eat for a day. Teach a man how to fish, and he will eat for a lifetime. This is the saying when it comes down to universal primary education. We see that universal primary education provides the equal opportunities of education to the citizens, leading to equality as a whole, as well as equitable distribution of resources. Because this is the reason why universality with education, there is going to be efficiency in economic development as well as sustainability, because the benefits are received by all the citizens in the country. Yeah. So what side opposition believes is how universal primary education is going to bring equality. So the two substantive points side opposition is going to bring is, first of all, that universal primary education promotes the long-term sustainability of the welfare of the people. And my second speaker will talk about how universal primary education addresses pressing issues in the society. So moving on to my rebuttals for today's debate. On the first rebuttal, on how their problem is that people are starving in the developing world, that is why they cannot prioritize it. On the principle level, we see the entire problem of famine is also because those local people are not producing enough food as well. Because those farmers in those developing countries also have to make sure that there is a sustainable supply of food in those developing countries. But we also see that the problem is not about famine. We see the problem is about where there's malnutrition in these countries, which can only be solved by education. Because education is going to teach these people about how to eat healthy and also to ensure that there's going to be a sustainable supply of healthy food in the country. On a practical level, we see that status quo already addresses the problem they are proposing, because there is humanitarian aid given to these countries every month. And we see there's already a MDG goal by the United Nations where 50% of extreme poverty and hunger will be eradicated by 2015. And we see we are already on track on that goal. So on the even if level, we see there is going to be donor fatigue as well. Because if they want to keep giving aid to these countries, we see that aid can reduce, because these countries don't see how aid is going to help when education should be the key. So moving on to my second rebuttal on the issue of aid, because on a principle level, we see when aid is given to these countries, there's going to be dependency, because since these countries are going to only rely on aid. And when they only rely on aid, it means that these people, these citizens, will not know how to sustain their lives. They will not know the skills, and the country will be standing only on aid. And we want the country to stand for themselves in order to develop the country in the first place. So moving on to the third rebuttal, on how they talk about infrastructure and how technical skills are going to come with infrastructure. We see if they build hospitals, how exactly is this going to help the country when there's no one educated at all, when there's no one with skills? Because you're not going to have doctors, you're going to only have hospitals. And we don't see the logical link behind technical skills and building infrastructure at all. We also see that is not going to extend those businesses that you talked about. We see businesses are not going to grow because these people are uneducated. We see when these people are uneducated, we also have to emphasize on these literacy and numeracy skills, because we see technical skills is not enough for these people, because technical skills is only about the jobs, but we also have to teach them how to read, how to write, and also numeracy skills as well. So moving on to what side opposition is going to do in today's debate. What side opposition is going to do is that we're going to apply the Bolsa Familia program to the developing world, where we give financial aid to families on the condition that they send their children to school. On the second level, if these parents do not send their children to school, we see they have the responsibility to homeschool their children and ensure that the standard corresponds with what the national government sets. Because the term is universality, where we think that it is important to ensure that all citizens get education. And on the third level, we're going to provide school meal programs to these children in order to ensure that they're going to eat healthy. On the fourth level, we're going to add technical lessons with normal lessons because it's going to give these children and people the opportunity to pursue jobs that require skills as well as better work conditions. So moving on to my argument on today's debate. On the first argument, on how universal primary education promotes the long-term sustainability of the welfare of the people. On the first level of analysis, how universal primary education is essential for self-actualization. Because universal primary education is necessary to develop the tools and the skills for these people to maximize their potential. We have to maximize their potential in the long term. This is because the basics of education is literacy and numeracy skills. But before I move on.
Even if skilled people are created, but before that, no job ever, only primitive job and only basic. So there is no workplace to these skills, jobs, not these skills.
We see that they are going to be skipping a step because they just assume that building businesses is going to create educated people and skilled people to work. But we have to ensure that these people are skilled before we can actually develop the economy and provide jobs to these people in the first place. So because we see that these literacy and numeracy skills, these skills are needed in their lives because the ability to read and write is important for these people to understand issues and ideas. We see these people need it in jobs, they need to prevent themselves from diseases and also in general their daily life. Because when they're illiterate, it means that they don't have any understanding and it's going to lead to the stagnant of the development of the country. We have to ensure that these people are literate before we can move the developing world forward. Because we see in the developing world right now, 69 million school-age children are illiterate and are not in schools. We see also the additional benefit of universal primary education is that the government of each country is setting the curriculum which they can use the opportunity to address the dire issues in the country. For example, in Africa, they teach sex education to children in primary school because there is a problem of AIDS in the country. So moving on to my second level of analysis on how universal primary education opens up economic opportunities and is the mechanism to address the basic needs. Because universal primary education is needed in order to ensure that these people are going to have a sustainable human resources. Because what we see is that these countries need to ensure that they're going to be sustainable in the long term, which the only way we can achieve this is in order to ensure that these skilled people are in the country. Because food, which is their problem, we see that it can only be solved with sustainable farmers, where farmers need to have more skills, need to have increased production of food, or about healthcare, where we need to ensure that there are sustainable people in the country. And that is why we think that universal primary education provides equal opportunities. Thank you.